Hello, so I'm back to read another issue of the Ladies' Home Journal from the past, 1884, specifically issue number 3 of volume 1. That's the month of February. There's a story that's begun. It's a humorous story called Jeremiah Jones Housekeeping. It's where the husband has to do it, and he learns a lesson. There's also, I'll go in kind of the order. It'll all be chaptered in the notes. Household hints, recipes, specifically a rose jelly cake. Read the recipe in total because you don't get a lot of details. Dinner party, specifics. How do you run your dinner party, including what temperature to keep the room at? Ads, women's allowances, and how U.S. husbands are a little bit stingy compared to British husbands. Coffee cake recipe, which I intend to make. I think I'll make it 2 days from now. A poem for children, a game to play for children with blindfolds and fire, advice to young girls who are being courted expensively where they're not interested in the boy, wedding present practicality, the new way of doing it. What's wrong with your face, ladies? Why are you all blotchy? Are you taking too many showers? Did you know that powdered oatmeal can help you? Cautionary tale. At the end, after the Jeremiah Jones story, we have a cautionary tale of Jenny versus Sophie. Jenny is good at economizing as a young bride, while spendthrifty Sophie comes to a bad end. We can learn all about that. And a little bit more ads at the end, including Mark Twain's favorite glue. So let's get started. I see poor Anne of Green Gable has been chopped in half there. We don't want that. Okay, let's go. Housekeepers' hints worth remembering. Finger marks. What neat housekeeper is not annoyed when she sees on the spotless woodwork of her doors or windows those long dark scratches which reveal that someone has tried to light a match by drawing it across the paint? Now, this is sometimes our experience, for servants will be forgetful or careless, and the telltale scratches greet our eyes in most unlooked for quarters. But we have found a remedy for the marks, which, as everyone knows, quite defy soap and water. Cut a sour orange or lemon in half. Apply the cut half to the marks, rubbing for a moment quite hard, then wash off with a clean rag, dipped first in water to moisten it, and then in whiting. Rub well with this rag, dry thoroughly, and 9 times out of 10 the ugly mark will vanish. Of course, sometimes they are burned in so deeply that they cannot be quite eradicated. All finger marks on painted walls, etc., should be rubbed off with a little damp whiting in the same way, and never washed with soap suds, which destroys the paint. Every lady ought to be able to go into the kitchen and tell her cook where she is doing wrong or extravagantly. Mothers, with all their zeal for intellectual advancement, ought to teach the wives of the future how to provide good and cheap dinners for their husbands. When cooking cabbage or onions, put a small quantity of vinegar in a cup on the stove. This neutralizes, in a great measure, the disagreeable odor from the cooking vegetable. Recipes. Rose jelly cake. 1 cup of sugar, 3 eggs, 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoonful cream tartar, half teaspoonful soda. Beat whites to a stiff froth, yolks and sugar to be well beaten, then put together, and flour gradually added. Bake in large dripping pan, and when done, turn on a cloth and spread with jelly while warm. What about this Yankee? There's coconut cakes. I won't look at everything, but let's look at Yankee brown bread. 3 cups sour milk, 3 cups Indian meal, 1½ cups rye meal, 1½ teaspoonfuls soda, 3 teaspoonfuls cream of tartar if sweet milk should be used instead of sour, 2/3 of a cup molasses, and a little salt. Steam 3 or 4 hours, then dry off in the oven for ½ hour. Dinner giving. Givers of dinners should lose no time in making themselves acquainted with all that has been written by the great masters of gastronomy. the following golden rules of Brillat-Savarin should be committed to memory. Let not the number of guests exceed 12, so that the conversation may be general. Let them be so selected that their occupations shall be varied, their tastes similar, their points of contact so numerous that to introduce them shall scarcely be necessary. Let the dining room be superbly lighted, the cloth of exquisite fineness and gloss, the temperature of the room from 60 degrees to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Let the men be cultivated without pretensions, and the ladies charming without coquetry. Let the dishes be exceedingly choice, but not too numerous. Let the order of the dishes be from the substantial to the light. Let the business of eating be very slow, the dinner being the last act of the day's drama, and let the guests and hosts consider themselves as so many travelers journeying leisurely toward the same destination. Let the coffee be hot. Let the drawing room be large enough for a game of cards, if any of the guests cannot go without it, and yet have space enough remaining for after-dinner conversation. Let the guests be retained by the attractions of the party and animated with the hope of some evening meeting again under the same pleasant auspices. Let not the tea be too strong. Let the toast be buttered in the most scientific manner. Let no one depart before 11 o'clock, and no one be in bed later than 12. If anyone has been present at a party fulfilling these conditions, he may boast of having been present at his own apotheosis. Perhaps this party would feature Levering's coffee. Ladies, give your husbands good coffee at breakfast. Our coffee is absolutely pure, not glazed or colored, and is selected from our large stock of green coffee with a special reference to its drinking qualities. Glazing and coloring roasted coffee adds to the weight and hides the imperfections, which is entirely against your interest as a consumer. Ask your grocer for Levering's coffee and take no other. Household expenses. Editress, Ladies' Home Journal. With the greater number of women, this yearly whirlwind might be all avoided by a fixed allowance for housekeeping and for clothing, which under no circumstances must be exceeded unless special provision is made therefor. But for some reason or other, American husbands are less inclined to make this arrangement with their wives than husbands of any other nation. In England, not only do wives have their pin money, but each daughter has her separate allowance upon which she dresses herself. This amount is hers to do with as she pleases, and she must not exceed it. It is an excellent arrangement in every way because it not only saves the wife's self-respect not to be obliged to ask for money for whatever she needs, but it also teaches her habits of economy and accustoms her to the disbursement of money. English wives, high or low, keep husbands' accounts with a degree of system which would astonish many an American housekeeper. Every penny spent in the house goes down in the housekeeper's book, which is an institution in every household. Every bill is carefully filed away when receipted. In fact, a perfect system of order prevails, which enables every man to know exactly how much it cost him to keep up his establishment. Moreover, every item of expenditure is made with reference to income. House rent must only be such a percentage, outlay for provisions so much, and no more servants' wages such an amount. School bills for children so much, dress so much, pew rent and charities a certain amount. And if, at the end of the year, it is found that the amount fixed has been exceeded in any particular, expenses are at once curtailed. Coffee cake, 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup molasses, 1 cup butter, 1 cup cold coffee, 1 cup of currants, 1 cup raisins, 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon saleratus, and spices to your taste. Bake not too fast. I'm going to make that. Archibald Stone's mistake. Archibald Stone is Archie's name, and Daisy Stone, that's Daisy. Mamas and papas are just the same, and mine, why, I am Maisie. Daisy and I are twins, you know, exactly 8 years old. We're just alike from top to toe. Our hair is just like gold. And Archie, he is almost 10 and figures on a slate, but does not add up rightly when he says we are not 8. For I have learned a little song. Its name is 2 times 2. That's why I know that Archie's wrong, for of course the song is true. Papa says not to worry more, nor vex my little pate, but Daisy's 4 and I am 4, and that makes us just 8. Cute. Blow out the candle. This play affords a great deal of amusement. A lighted candle is placed on a table. The player is blindfolded and whirled several times around. To make him lose his bearings, he will probably not walk toward the table or at all, or if he does, he will make a ridiculous efforts at blowing out a candle from want of preciseness of proximity. And then we can all laugh at him. Whoa. 10,000 male or female agents wanted to sell the Dickinson's syringes. I don't want to know. Here's a charade. High in the heavenly sphere beams my first, far and near. Low on refreshed earth, second proclaims its worth. Fed by the first and next whole, I am made complete, blossoming on your way, in at your very feet. I believe that is something to solve. Hopefully the answer will be contained within the next issue. We'll find out. So these are to girls. A word to girls. Many a girl is careless as to how much money a young man spends for her. $3 and $5 for a horse and carriage he can poorly afford. Perhaps, yet she will go with him week after week with no particular interest in him, unmindful apparently whether he earns the money or takes it from his employer's drawer. He makes her expensive presents. He takes her to a concert, in going to which a horse car ride for 10 cents would be far wiser than a carriage ride for several dollars. A young man respects a young woman all the more who is careful of the way in which he spends his money, and will not permit too much to be used for her. A thoughtful and well-bred girl will be wise about these matters. Here's wedding presents. Here's some bridezillas of the past. There is general complaint among brides that wedding presents are not half as costly and elegant as they used to be. Let the brides complain. We are glad to know that the habit of presenting brides with costly gifts is being done away with, and we trust that it will go entirely out of fashion. It is all very well for the near relatives of the bride and groom to give them handsome presents, but when it comes to ordinary acquaintances presenting them with extravagant gifts, it is senseless and silly to a degree. Half the time, the people who present the gifts do not do it from any kind, loving motive, but simply because they do not wish to appear mean, and in many instances not wishing to be outdone by others, buy costlier gifts than their purses allow. All this is ridiculous. Let those outside of the family who are invited to a wedding give the bride some simple little token of their goodwill and affection, a good book or a good engraving. All these gifts of expensive silverware and grand pianos and wonderful bric-a-brac and oil paintings, etc., that cost small fortunes from anyone but members of either the bride or the groom's family are an extremely bad taste. And while upon this subject, we may as well say that to exhibit the presents with the cards attached, as was done at one of 2 large weddings lately, is unworthy anyone who boasts the slightest acquaintance with good breeding and good taste. There is some good reason why a woman has a coarse or mottled skin. Either the digestion is bad, the blood impure, or she does not bathe sufficiently. If the face is washed often and the rest of the body only occasionally, all the impurities which are in the skin must come out through the pores of the skin on the face. Thus, care should be taken to wash the body at least once a day. A sponge bath is the best, as any other kind, when taken too often, tends to weaken the system. If powdered oatmeal is rubbed on the skin after bathing, it proves beneficial. So if you have too many showers, your system becomes weak. The Ladies' Home Journal and Practical Housekeeper, February 1884. Jeremiah Jones's Housekeeping by Helen M. Winslow. I dunno when I've had a spell before, not for a good many years anyway, but the other day I was so beat out I was glad to take my bed and let my partner run the housekeeping. This was the way it happened. We'd had company for a number of days right along, my relations from Freedom and Jeremiah's from the flats, till it did seem as if there wasn't no let up to it. And after my brother and his wife and 3 children, sister Tryphena and her daughter and grandchildren, and dead husband's sister, and my brother's mother-in-law, had every one of them been and made us a good visit, it did seem a little too much when Jeremiah's 2 cousins from Bungtown, with their wives and 5 children, came right upon us without a word of warning, and not so much as a ginger snap cooked in the house. Now, I don't hold to running down your partner's relations, but after we'd got the house fairly cleaned of cousins, sisters, aunts, babies, mothers-in-law, etc., to see Mother Jones and Brother Hyle drive up to the door early in the forenoon, with all of the 7 children tucked into every available corner of the wagon, was a little too much for female human nature, and I said to Jeremiah when I went out to call him in from the oat field that it seemed to me this company business was about played out. Then Jeremiah came in and sat down to rub his rheumatic knee while his folks was a-getting settled comfortably in the spare room, and to pacify me if he could, while I tried to snatch a few minutes to finish my ironing before his relations should have to be fed. Now, that man worships me, if ever a man worshipped a partner, but it's kind of maddened him to have me speak so of his relations, and he snapped out, "Well, I'd like to know if a man's relations can't come a-visitin' once in a while without being reviled and backbit. I dunno, but my relations just as good as anybody else's relations." I see I'd stroked his fur the wrong way, and I began to think of smoothing of it down. "Yes, Jeremiah, they be," says I. "Only I'm tired to death of my own relations, to say nothing of anybody else's. I don't know what folks want to form themselves into battalions and charge upon their family connections and eat 'em out of old house and home for just 'cause they be relations. But come, you catch the old rooster on your way up and wring its neck, and we'll have a good dinner for 'em, if we do have to sacrifice old Boniface." There's the picture. Jeremiah Jones's housekeeping. But it kind of maddened him to have me speak so of his relations. For I was bound not to give his relations a chance to say I wasn't as good a hand to get up a dinner as any of the Joneses, not if the old rooster could help it. And so all our hens were wittered by one turn of fortune's hand, or my partner's, and go in the weeds today that his relations should have a good dinner. I had to go cooking and work over the hot stove all that roasting day, though it's against my principles to do housework afternoons, and I never got round to visit a word, only as some of 'em tagged me into the buttery and kept getting underfoot till after supper. But just as I'd got round to set down and take some comfort visitin' with 'em, Hyle up and says, "We shall have to be going home, for I expect old Toby over to look at the speckled cow tonight. Maybe he'll buy her." And all I and my partner could say wouldn't keep him a minute. After they went, Jeremiah and me, being all alone, we said we'd go to bed early and get a good night's rest, for we didn't know what a day might bring forth in the way of company, and if our third and fourth cousins should all take a notion to give us a surprise party the next day, we should need all the rest we could get. I had got partly undressed and got my nightcap on, and Jeremiah had got down to his overalls when we heard a noise in the cellar. "What's that?" says Jeremiah. "It's the cat," says I. "That ain't no cat," says he, although he hadn't no theory in particular about it, only the desire to be contrary. "That's the cat," says I again, more firmly, as the noise sounded the second time. "She's after the remains of old Boney that I set on the swinging shelf." "That ain't no cat, I say," says Jeremiah. "I tell you, it's something wuss'n cats. I believe the burglars are burgling round here," and he began to look pale. "Burglars?" says I. "Pshaw! Who'd be burgling round here this time o' night?" "I say 'tis," says he, adding, as he slipped off his pants, "I wish he'd just step to the cellar door, flavely, and see. I've all undressed." "If you really think it's burglars," says I should think you'd rather be a man. Take down your father's old blunderbuss and go yourself. How'd you feel to see your wife of your bosom brought back to you a mangled and bloody corpse?" "Don't, Flavely," says he, his teeth almost chattering. "What kind of a condition be I in to go to the cellar door? Say, how'd I look confronting burglars in this rig? And maybe it's some of the neighbors, or most likely 'tis," says I, in tones that ought to have froze him, but didn't quite. "Probably it's the elder come over to call, and came through the gangway." And taking up the candle, I passed as majestically as circumstances and my nightcap would permit out to the cellar door, went down to the stairs, drove out the kittens and the old tabby, fastened the gangway tight, and started upstairs again, intending to say something very cutting things to my lawful and beloved partner. But would that every time a woman thinks of some pesky mean thing to say to her partner, Providence might stop it as effectually. The bottom cellar stair was made of old doorstone and was dreadful uneven. So just as I stepped on it, my foot slipped and down I went with a crash. Jeremiah heard it and rushed to the door without considering his wardrobe this time. "Be you hurt?" says he, adding in a whisper, "Is it burglars?" "No," says I, "it ain't, and yes, I be." And he then trying to get up, I suddenly sat back with a groan. Men may love to hector their partners, be they ever so faithful, and be they ever so good cooks, but when they hear them groaning in pain, they're all tenderness. Such a groan as I gave then convinced my partner that I was seriously hurt, and he came down the stairs as if his life and mine depended on it. I believe his only thought was for me. In fact, he owned up next morning that his one thought as he flew over those cellar steps was, "Who will get my dinner now?" But to make a long story short, we soon found out that my ankle had a bad sprain on it, and do what we could, there was no dodging that. I couldn't step on it a minute, nor think of such a thing. So how I was to get up them stairs was more than I knew, or Jeremiah either. Says he, "I shall have to take and carry you up, Flavilla." And bad as my ankle ached, and fast as it was swelling, I laughed and laughed, for my weight is over 200 pounds, and my partner can't come up to 125 in the still yards anyhow. "Couldn't you wait here," says he, "pretty soon, till I could fix up a derrick and hoist you up with that?" "Maybe I could," says I, "but I ain't a-going to. You came here, and he came. You come here, and he came, and steadying myself on his manly shoulders, I managed, with the aid of the cellar wall and a good many groans, to get upstairs again and to bed. Then Jeremiah, he got the arnica, and we rubbed it and did it up, the ankle, not the arnica. My partner done nobly that time. I'll say that for him. He done everything, got bandages, rubbed arnica, done it up so that it looked like a very large roll of sausages, and even offered to go to the doctor. But it didn't do much good. I didn't sleep none with it. And what with so much company and all, I was about sick in the morning, to say nothing of the ankle, which had swelled and swelled till it was a sight to behold. So Jeremiah, being still in a noble, generous frame of mind, declared I shouldn't get up at all, but lay abed, and he'd do the work. And as there was nobody else to do it, and I couldn't get up, I lay abed, and maybe then, and let him try the housekeeping department. Maybe it was mean in me, but I thought there, on a bed a sufferin', I thought to myself, now for years and years my partner ain't known what it be like to have me away from the home or laid up in bed. Now, maybe he'll begin to see what women are worth for men. Be they ever so good, get careless, and come to think women and women's work ain't, as you might say, the chief spoke in the wheel. But let that spoke drop out, even for a day, and the whole domestic machinery is demoralized. But I'm moralizing and not telling stories, or what I should be telling stories and not moralizing. Jeremiah, he got up and built a fire and put on potatoes to boil, and then he started off to the barn and went a milking. When he came in with the milk, the fire had all gone out, and he set down his pails in the middle of the floor and went for the fire. But he had to go out and split some kind of kindling wood, and by the time he came in, the old cat and kittens had appeared on the scene again. They see the pails, and thinking it was their breakfast, and honestly being foreign to the nature of cats, they began to help themselves. But the Maltese one couldn't wait till the other one could get out of the way, and in his hurry he scrambled over him, and first thing I knew, he was floundering around in the strainin' pail. I could see it all from the bedroom where I lay. Jeremiah, coming in, see the kitchen splashing the milk all over the kitchen floor, and he dropped his kindlin' and picked up the kitten. "Plague take these cats," says he, shaking the milk off the Maltese, and then tossing him out into the woodshed. "There, go out there and dry up. What in tunket a woman wants of so many cats is more'n I know. What be I going to do? Flavely," says he, in an appealing tone. "First I should mop up the milk from the floor, not to track it all around," says I. "Then I should start the fire. Then, when I got the potatoes to boilin', I should go into the milk room and strain the milk for the calves. Then I should come out and fix the fire, for being made on softwood, it needs constant tendin'. Then I should go down cellar and cut off a couple of slices of pork to fry, and bring up the butter and a pie. Then I should make the coffee. Then I should set the table and toast the bread. Then, if there was a minute to spare before the potatoes was done, "There won't be Flavely," put in my partner solemnly. "The potatoes will have time to boil several times over before I get all that done, and I've got to finish milking and feed the calves first, too." "What is that in the pan, Flavely?" he said, pointing to the table. "That," says I, craning my neck round, trying to see, till it almost ached. "Oh, that's the bread I put to sponge last night. You want to keep watch of it, and not let it get riz too much." "Sakes alive," says he. "How does it happen, Flavely, that you don't never have anywhere near so much to do before breakfast as there is this morning?" "On the contrary," says I, not without a certain triumph in the thought, "I always have just as much and often more to do than there is this morning. But I'm used to it, and there's nothing like being used to a thing. But don't stop to talk, or you won't have breakfast till noon." And my partner turned up the damper to the stove, looking as if he'd had one turned down on him somewhere, and started for the barn again. In about 20 minutes, he'd finished milking and came in. Then he went down cellar and got the salt pork. He forgot the butter, of course. Putting the meat to fry, he said he guessed he'd skim the milk next, adding that he liked to do housework first rate. "Wish I'd known it before," says I, but he got into the buttery and shut the door. In a few minutes, I smelled the fat burning, but I'd made up my mind to lay abed for two reasons. One was that you can't heal a sprained ankle by walking around on it. And the other was that now was a good time to teach my partner a lesson. The best of men need training occasionally, and hard as it might be for both of us, it was for his good and mine that I was to give him one this morning. Where I lay, I couldn't see the kitchen stove, but this fat smelled worse and worse, and the air was soon as blue as the cloud that surrounded our old smoker. I tried to call Jeremiah, but my voice rang out through the room without making a bit of impression on my partner, for he had shut the buttery door and passed on into the milk room. The consequence was that when he came back, finally, the meat was burned and the water all boiled out of the potatoes. "Hello," says he. "Here's the meat all burnt to a crisp, and the taters too. What did you let them do that for?" "How could I help it?" says I, in calm tones, for I know how natural it is at sometimes to want to lay the blame off on somebody. "I'll get up, if you say so, Jeremiah." "No, you won't neither," says he. "You're going to stay in bed where you belong. And dumn it, what's that stuff running all over the edge of the table?" "It ain't the bread, is it?" says I. "I should smile if it wasn't," says he. "What shall I do with the pesky stuff anyway? I want to set the table. Throw it in the swill barrel?" "No, no," says I, trying not to laugh. "If it's clean, scrape up the top of it and put it in the pan. You'll have to mold up the bread the first thing you do, I guess." "Wall, I should like my breakfast sometime," says he, "leastway to get out of the way in time for dinner. Can the bread wait till tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," says I. "Tomorrow? Why, every housekeeper knows that bread is something that's got to be waited on just the minute it rises and says, 'Here I be, tend to me, or else it's spoiled.' Tomorrow? You might as well throw it away now." But he wouldn't do that, I knew, being too savin'. So he went to work at the bread. He got the flour out without being told to, and put both hands into the dough. To be continued. So this story will be continued in next month's issue. Here's a little story called "Those Wedding Gifts." "Jenny, you don't understand the science of wedding invitations in the least. Why should you invite all those old schoolmates and friends who will only bring you soft pillows and crocheted tidies and toilet mats for wedding gifts? For my part, I mean to make every invitation count. Ma and I had a serious time making out the list. We did not know whether to invite old Mrs. Hubbard or not. She is rich, but so close. Still, we remembered the old silver cream pitcher she gave to Adeline and concluded to risk it. Sophie! I'm ashamed that a cousin of mine should be so mercenary. For my part, I will never go around, in effect, hat in hand, soliciting contributions from my friends. That is what it amounts to in reality, and the same with all those tin and wooden and linen and crystal weddings. A variety wedding, as I understand it, is a general donation party. Now, for the parties themselves to get up such a gathering looks to me like very bare-faced begging. It seems trying enough when they come as a surprise. Oh, Jenny, such notions are far too fine spun for everyday life. Everybody does so, and everybody is glad enough of the gifts. How about the givers? It seems to me I heard a certain cousin of mine puzzling seriously over what to take to such a party and bemoaning the expense. Of course, it is harder for us than for some, but I have taken care to invite no one who cannot afford a handsome gift outside the family, of course, and I shall look for something handsome from a number of Fred's relations also. There's his Uncle Philip, who ought to give me one of those elegant cameos he brought from abroad. I have been awful nice to him and have often told him how much I admired them. Mother invited Mr. and Mrs. Dean. They keep a china store, you know, and I do hope that they will bring me a china set. I shall need it so much to go with my silver. Everybody gets loads of silver. I do hope everyone's mind won't run in the same direction. I don't know what I should do if they did. I have heard of folks slipping off to the city and exchanging articles they had in excess for something they did need. It had to be managed pretty slyly, but I believe I should do it in case I get all molasses pitchers and pickle casters, for instance. Well, Sophie, I don't know how you will like my present, but I am a very plain, practical mortal, and you must not look for anything fanciful from me. Here it is. And she opened her bureau and took out a set of beautiful damask towels, deeply fringed, with a graceful deer in the center stooping to drink at a woodland stream. Her cousin's initials were beautifully worked in just in the corners of each. "Just exquisite," said Sophie with enthusiasm. "And just like you, Jenny, to give such a sensible present. Handsome linen like this is always in order. Mother will be especially delighted, for to tell you the truth, Jenny, my 3 silk dresses cost so much, I came out very short on such matters. I would not go to housekeeping at all, only Fred's father is so notional about it. Thinks boarding is a very poor plan for young people." "I should not be satisfied with anything else," said Jenny, "and I am especially glad we can begin in our home, if it is a little one. Charlie has improved the place a great deal since he bought it. The yard and garden is all trimmed up neatly, the old rickety fence taken away, and the whole is in one pretty lot. You must come and see us, Sophie, as soon as we are settled, and if we don't have things as fine as you, I hope you will find all cozy and comfortable." "Well, Jenny, I wish you joy in your love of a cottage. But I do wish you were more ambitious and showed a little more worldly wisdom in planning your wedding. It would help you a great deal in getting your outfit." And she shook her head very seriously over her cousin's poor financiering. "I would prefer a lamp mat someone gave for love better than a grudged silver teapot." "No matter how they grudge 'em, so I get them," said Sophie with a light laugh as she tripped away down the steps. A grand party came off the next week, and poor Pater Williams walked about with a burdened mind in the midst of its splendors. How to pay the piper was the anxious thought which would obtrude itself in the midst of its gaieties. On the whole, though so carefully chosen invitations did not prove so good a speculation as had been hoped. It is true that there were 3 tall ice pitchers and 4 pickle casters, and enough syrup cups for each day of the week, and forks and spoons in variety, but everyone seemed to have forgotten that knives also were handy in a household. The china set also failed to appear, and there seemed a slight incongruity between the silverware and the plain delft that was obliged to go with it. But the incongruities were apparent all through the house, though the parlor furnishings were the nearest complete. An oil stove with scanty wares had to do duty in the kitchen, but it was ample for the small amount of cooking Sophie cared to do. Whatever could be bought ready-made in the matter of provisions was procured, though it almost doubled the expense of living. Sophie's whole system of life was ruled by the sentiment, "What will people say?" Truly, it is the eyes of other people that cost us so much, far more than the comforts of life and all its needfuls. A sealskin coat for her Christmas gift, which she had schemed and toiled and saved and begged and cried to get, absorbed all the means that should have gone into the house and created $100 debt besides. So the first year of her new home life did not dawn very auspiciously. Fred went to his business with a dispirited air, remembering that breakfast table hint with a regard to a new hat suitable to wear with the new coat. "And a dress will be sure to be wanted next," he grumbled to himself as he walked along. He was puzzling over the knotty problem that had harassed so many young men on how to make $1,000 salary support a 2,500 style of living. It is safe to say he did not lay up much money that year. He could not help drawing a comparison and feeling the contrast when he spent an evening with Charlie Scott at Old Point Comfort, as they called their little cottage. You've rightly named it too, Charlie, but I guess you find housekeeping an expensive luxury. It costs me less than to board just myself alone. I don't know how Jenny manages it, but we have prime breakfasts and suppers. I can't say for the dinners, as I am away, but I sometimes think Jenny fasts for that meal. She spends so little. I never knew a little money could go so far, and I hope to be enough ahead to improve the home next year. We are planning improvements all the while, and making small ones too as we can. I tell you, it is an inducement to save and to improve a place when you feel that it is your own. We are all selfish enough for that." "It will be a long day before I own a home, I think," said the other, tapping his boot with his cane. And I don't know as I want one. An awful bother to keep up repairs, pay taxes, and all that. I think I should prefer to let the landlord do that. But we've got to move again this spring. We can't possibly keep up with such rent. The moving became as fixed an event as the return of the robins, and it made life a weariness, and Sophie wrinkled before her time. Each remove she declared to be for the worse, and it materially soured her temper. A whole life dedicated to show did not help the couple to thrive in any sense. Even the coveted wedding gifts had not been a source of unalloyed profit. They were something like a gentleman's brass andirons, which he said cost him in the end $3,000. First, the fireplace had to be remodeled to suit them, then some new furniture to match the marble mantel, and then a pulling down of partitions, and general fixing over and furnishing until the 3,000 were expended. Jenny's wedding gifts were nearly all keepsakes, and such as such were treasured with care, and often looked over with affection and many pleasing remembrances, while discontent was yearly settling and brooding over Sophie's spirit and making crow's feet in the corner of her eyes. Jenny grew fairer and brighter with age, as all her friends could testify. Living within or living without one's means makes a vast difference in the career of any young couple. By Mabel. Couple of ads. Wanted a woman of sense and energy for our business in her locality. Middle age preferred. Salary $35 to $50. References exchanged. Gay Brothers and Company, 18 Barclay Street, New York. This glue. LePage's liquid glue, the strongest adhesive known. Mason and Hamlin, used by Mason and Hamlin Organ and Piano Company, the Pullman Palace Car Company, the Abbott Downing Company, and by thousands of other leading manufacturers and mechanics throughout the world. Unequaled for repairing furniture, crockery, glasswares, etc., and holding cards and in albums. Mark Twain's scrapbook is gummed with it. There's a claim.